All right, so we are gonna talk about little looms, and we're gonna work a little loom today. So this is the little loom that I use, and there are lots of different kinds of little looms. Usually they fall into two categories. This is called an I loom because, you know, it looks like a capital I. And then there are also frame looms, so the frame would be on the outside. I love this little loom because it's got this little rocker handle. I'm partial to it because my partner made it. But it's just, you know, it fits in a backpack. I can use it in the car. And little, you can make great stuff with little looms. And I brought some examples here to show you. This is a set of mug rugs that I'm working on, and somewhere around here I had some completed ones. Let's see. Stick them back in here. Yeah. So here, and you can do 4 at a time. So those will be little coasters. And then a lot of what I do is, you know, just little wall hangings and things like that. But you could make bracelets. So here is a wall hanging. This had a whole variety of things. This is hand spun cashmere, Peruvian cotton, mill spun Erie silk, more Peruvian cotton, hand spun Wensleydale, and then a commercial wool yarn. Here's another one. And we're going to talk a little bit about what you warp with. So this particular piece has some warp that shows through. That's not necessarily a typical technique, but it would make a difference in the warp that you chose. Here is another one, and that's alpaca and CVM from our herd. Another one, all the fibers are from our herd. So let's see, this is, I do a 5-day fiber camp, and did it online last year, and this was my project from that. And then one that I show often, and I just need to get it off the loom, but I haven't. But this was my first attempt at overshot, which was a really fun technique. So all kinds of things. Okay, let me squint here. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to squint and see if you've got comments. Oh yeah, Tiffany, bust out the loom. You've got to do some weaving. Okay, so here is the loom. I'm going to talk about parts of the loom. So this is header, footer, handle. This is, these are the warping slots. And when we started making the looms, the slots were a little bit bigger and it didn't have this spline. And my partner was concerned that if you dropped it, that the teeth might break. And so she added this spline, which goes the wood grain goes a different direction. I'm not the woodworker. So anyway, then you need something to, you know, tamp down the weft. So this is one option. It's called a comb. So this is one option. And here's another. This is my favorite little comb. I got it. I acquired it from a friend. Okay, and then a shuttle is almost overkill for a little loom, but sometimes if you're doing a large portion of one yarn, you know, you can load a lot more on here than you can with just a needle. And here's an example of a needle. All right. Okay, so let's get started. For a second. I like to warp with cotton yarn. It doesn't stretch like wool or alpaca. And it's important to have a base that, you know, that your warp is solid, provides a solid base for your weaving. So I use So I use cotton, and the lighting isn't great down here. So some of this, I'm going to put this away because I know that's the one I want to use. Some of this is cotton craft yarn from the craft store, some of which I've dyed, and some of which I bought in colors. I also am more likely to weave with this. This is some Peruvian cotton. But I also like to warp with it. I talked about how if you wanted to leave a window in your weaving, then, you know, something nice for warp if you're going to see a design through. I used to make little weavings, and it was a heart shape, and you could see the warp in the middle. And so I warped with red, and then the outside was gray. All right, so let's get started. Beth, you might need one. Okay. So you can warp the whole thing. You can, like the one with the mug rugs, I warped 2 different sets. Today, I'm going to make I'm going to start a smaller wall hanging. So I'm going to count in, I'm kind of scattered today, I apologize. So the dent on these with the spline is 6, and that means that there are 6, oops, wrong end. You get the drift. There are 6 slots per inch. And that's the same thing if you're using a big loom or a little loom. The dent is the number of slots per inch. So this is 6. Our earlier looms were, I think, 5 because the slots were smaller. So I'm going to count in 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is pretty hefty. The craft yarn is pretty hefty. So I have this little tab in the back, and I'm going to bring the yarn around to the front and pull it tight, and that just kind of locks that in place. I don't tie a knot because I don't want to have to deal with that when I'm taking it off the loom. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I like to have a double salvage. When you weave, particularly if you're weaving little projects on a loom like this, the tendency is for your tension to change and for your project to kind of look like an hourglass. And so by adding an extra warp on the end, you can help avoid that. And there are some techniques. Next week we'll do basic stitches, and I'll show you some other techniques. So I have it here. I'm going to come back 2 slots and then forward 1, maybe. And then I'm coming back along that same route. And I'm going to do that at the end, so I'll show that a second time. But I've come back, and now I have 2 warps in that same hole. And then I'm going to lose my yarn on the floor. I'm going to warp every thread. And I'm holding it with my thumb. Sorry, I'm coming out of the light there. I'm holding it with my thumb until I get to the next one, and then I'll hold it with my thumb again because I want to keep this tension pretty tight. You don't necessarily need to bounce a quarter on it, but it needs to be pretty taut. And then, so I'm going to keep checking here on you guys, and I'm just going to, so I'm going every slot. You could, if you were doing Can you hear? They're humming and they're, Blue, you should go in and feed them. They're making a lot of noise in my bedroom. The more warp you have, the number wise, the more detail you can do in your weaving. So if you were doing a wall hanging and there wasn't going to be a lot of detail, you could warp every other slot. It would go faster, it would be less warp, and it would be a bolder design. This is the boring part. Oops, and then I missed one. All right, I'm gonna go back, but I won't warp it all the way across, so you guys don't have to wait too long. Gotta keep your eye on that, because if you miss one, you have to go back. There's no fixing it later on. I hope you guys are having good weather where you are. It's another cloudy, well, I think it's more smoky than cloudy out there, but it's cooler, so I guess we'll take it. We have lots of smoke from the fire. We're not close, but we have lots of smoke from the fires here. I feel bad for the animals out there. Okay, so I guess I will warp it all the way across. And then I'm going to count here because I think I'm getting pretty close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 1, 4. Okay, so I've got 4 more to go here on the top. Okay, and you want to finish up, and I want, when you're doing overshot, you want an odd number, but for the vast majority of the rest of the weaving, I'm looking for an even number of warps. So I'm going to count here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. Okay, so I'm going to back off 1, well, here. And then I'm going to make that salvage edge. So I've come to this hole. I'm going to go over 2. Where's the... I'm going to come back 1. And then I'm going to come back into that same end hole so that again I have these 2 together on the end. Right. Oh, that's good that it's sunny there. I'm sorry about lots of people have had flooding. Okay. Then I'm going to come around and cut myself a nice tail. And then I'm going to do that same thing here where I stick the tail under. And then I'm just going to pull it tight. So I don't knot at all. And there's your warped little loom.